to live with this. I've been living in this neighborhood for more than 60 years. I also used to have a business here. And I understand people need a place to stay, but this is too much. This is not a park anymore. A lot of our neighbors, we don't take our dogs there anymore because you find all kind of stuff, needle, condoms, beer can, and it's not just these people that are living here, also in the weekend, because in the weekend this has become a party.
David Menzies for Rebel News here in Toronto. And folks, before I get to our update on the situation here at Trinity Bellwoods Park, please go to taketorontoback.com. If you are as sick and tired as so many citizens are about the state of conditions of so many parks in Toronto that have devolved into filthy tent cities, sign the petition and I will deliver it myself to John Tory's office. Once again, taketorontoback.com. Well, this is indeed why we are here. You may recall last Wednesday, my cameraman Lincoln and I came to Trinity Bellwoods. We were tipped off by a viewer that the playground on one day had been overrun with needles, and she was very concerned given that she has a 4-year-old and didn't want any kind of material like that to affect her daughter's health. Well, we were here basically to do a monologue, which was to show the dichotomy of what happened back in May when the city painted these white social distancing circles in which park goers had to remain inside or face an $880 fine, versus what we have here, which are tents that are, they're a health hazard. There's no social distancing going on there, and law enforcement and the politicians are turning a blind eye to that. Now, that was the sole reason for us coming here, but as you know, if you've seen the previous video, as we were shooting the introduction to that video, well, this is what went down.
Move! I don't like myself being filmed. You don't have the right to actually smash that camera. Hey, right now. I wouldn't do that. I have the right to smash that. Hey,
by law, don't do that.
By law, I have the right to smash that.
You have the right to smash that camera by law?
Yeah, by law, you know I have to smash that camera.
What law are you quoting?
We have to live with this. I've been living in this neighborhood for more than 60 years. I also used to have a business here. And I understand people need a place to stay, but this is too much. This is not a park anymore. A lot of our neighbors, we don't take our dogs there anymore because you find all kind of stuff, needle, condoms, beer can, and it's not just these people that are living here, also in the weekend, because in the weekend this has become a party. And again, the government should be taking care of this. See, and again, I don't blame the animals. It's all the owners.
I think that was the female dog that was involved in our attack. I can tell you 2 of my thighs were mangled, still got a bite taken out of my thumb. Now, for the update, the good news is that the people behind this assault have been charged. One suspect, his name is Dean Edsey. He's 40. He was charged with assault with a weapon, assault causing bodily harm and mischief. The other suspect, he was listed as Mark Durant. I believe his name is Andre Durant, 61. He's charged with assault. He was the gentleman that punched the cell phone out of my hand a little later on. We've also reached out to the City of Toronto and the Mayor's office. I received a statement from Mayor Tory spokesman Don Pete, and Mr. Pete says, "Hi David, Mayor Tory firmly believes that any violence in our parks is unacceptable. We understand from Toronto Police that they launched an immediate investigation into this incident and that charges are pending. The mayor has also been clear repeatedly that encampments are unacceptable. That is why he supports the work that city staff are doing to move people out of encampments and remove encampments from our parks and other parts of the city." Well, I appreciate Mr. Pete getting back to me and the sentiments of the mayor, but I mean, for goodness sakes, we are witnessing here perhaps, 11 sections of the Trespass Act being violated, including the fact that you can't camp overnight in a park. So I would really like to see the city actually do something about this, have the park returned to the citizens of Toronto, i.e. the taxpayers, the people paying the salaries of the politicians and the bureaucrats. That would be kind of nice to uphold the rule of law. Furthermore, received a note also from Brad Ross. He is the spokesman for the City of Toronto. And he said, "Hi, David, I am terribly sorry this assault happened. That is never, ever acceptable. I sincerely hope you're okay. I have copied my colleagues from the Toronto Police Service for a response to this unacceptable incident. With respect to the encampment, as noted yesterday, staff continue to work to find shelter and housing for individuals there. Moving people out of the park en masse without somewhere for them to go would simply mean moving the problem elsewhere. Our staff continue to attend the encampment to engage with people in hopes of getting them to accept shelter where we have it or medical care where needed. The pandemic has truly stretched city resources and available shelter space for homeless people. It's an incredibly challenging situation. Park staff are also doing a sweep daily to ensure discarded needles are picked up." And once again, that's from Brad Ross, the spokesman for the City of Toronto. And as much as I do appreciate his well wishes, this story isn't about my dog bite, folks. It is about the people who live in this area, law-abiding citizens who just want to use the park, well, for a park and not have to endure a battleground. Now, another interesting update is I had a city insider tell me that when Dean Edzey was arrested on Thursday, which was the day after the attack, his tent, was actually demolished by the other residents of the Trinity Bellwoods tent city. My source tells me he has used his dogs as weapons before. He is not a particularly nice individual. In fact, my source described him as a bully. And they were actually overjoyed that he had been taken into custody. So how do you like that, folks? Even amongst other people squatting illegally, this person was considered a menace, and they were glad to see him removed. Now, you can see the tents back up. That's because Andre came back yesterday, allegedly, and put it back together. So it's kind of like a metaphor for the tent city problem in Toronto parks, isn't it? It's like whack-a-mole. You get rid of one or two, and then two or three pop up once again. In any event, we're going to just walk through to the safe part of the park where the social distancing circles are, and see if there's any actual law enforcement going on there, which is perverse. Another update to tell you, the large male mastiff that bit me, his name is Grizzly, and if you can imagine, Grizzly was on a dangerous dogs list. Now, the City of Toronto, including my own incident, has 3 reported incidents of this dog biting people. I was told by a wildlife officer that after the first occurrence, the owner was given a written warning. After the second occurrence, it went on the dangerous dog list, which meant it could live only under certain conditions, such as it always had to be leashed, it always had to have a muzzle on it. Clearly, that wasn't the case, as you saw for our Wednesday visit. And then the third incident of biting was on me on Wednesday. It is now in quarantine. I believe after 10 days, after it's checked for rabies, it will be put down. But my source also told me these are simply the reported incidents of Grizzly biting people. There have been, according to this person, more than 20 attacks on people, sometimes just pedestrians just walking up and down a sidewalk. I think it's absolutely perverse that you have a dangerous dog and it is returned to somebody who is apparently suffering from serious substance abuse issues, and B, is a bully. And as you saw, he wasn't obeying any of the regulations of owning a dangerous dog. To be quite frank, I wouldn't trust a Chihuahua in the hands of this particular person. Well, folks, our final destination after visiting Trinity Bellwoods Park is a facility about a click away from the park. It's the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, CAMH. Now, this is also the former site of what was Toronto's insane asylum, if you can call it that. I know that's very much politically incorrect language to use these days, but the fact remains is that the people with substance abuse issues, the people with mental health issues that now comprise Trinity Bellwoods Park, well, once upon a time, this is where they were kept for our safety and theirs. But in the 60s and 70s, there was a process of deinstitutionalization. The theory was there are all kinds of new medications on the market, and as long as the former inmates take their meds, then they can self-medicate and they won't be a problem. But that's a big if, as long as they take their meds. And I think one of the things that we see in parks in Toronto, like Trinity Bellwoods, is the fact that institutions that once upon a time house these people no longer do so. It could be a matter of finances. It could be a matter of political correctness. And I say that, folks, because remember last year when a client of CAMH simply walked out the facility and incredibly, without a passport, boarded a flight to China. His name was Zabin Kong. And what he had done previously, he took a meat cleaver and hacked his roommate to bits. Now, that even got Premier Doug Ford to weigh in on the Kong matter. He went on the Jerry Agar show on CFRB in Toronto, and this is what the Premier had to say.
Someone's going to be answering, because you can't, if they're calling this low risk, what is high risk? What is the family thinking of the poor victim that got chopped up with a meat cleaver by this nutcase, and then they let him loose out on the streets? How did he get a passport to go to China?
Yeah, and that ignited a media and political shitstorm, folks, because the Premier calling, well, basically a crazy person crazy. Oh, no, you can't do that. The Premier also called him later on a nutcase. That is also verboten. And I think that's part of the issue here, isn't it? When we have political correctness eclipsing public safety, when we can't even call a person who hacked his roommate to death with a meat cleaver crazy or a nutcase, when that takes predominance over the horrific crime itself, I think that speaks volumes. And one last thing, our City Hall source tells us that what is further fueling the problem in terms of this day and age of the Wuhan virus and the homeless is the fact that not only is there limited shelter space due to social distancing, but the fact that with the CERB, those payments coming every 2 weeks, that has created a Christmas-like environment. So not only are these folks getting their disability, they're also getting the CERB. And what my source told me is that they are spending that CERB immediately, not on food, not on shelter, not on clothing, but typically on illicit drugs. These are the problems that we are facing right now with our parks being taken over by the denizens of tent cities, some of whom are very violent, some of whom have vicious animals. And what it needs is for governments to govern and to law enforcement to enact the rule of law. Otherwise, we will continue to see the law of the jungle prevail. For Rebel News, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies. Folks, are you sick and tired of seeing our parks surrendered to the takers? Meanwhile, the makers are the ones being penalized? Then go to our petition at TakeTorontoBack.com. That's TakeTorontoBack.com. Sign it, and I'll deliver this to Mayor Tory's office personally.